Welcome to the Modern Yogi Podcast. An exploration of ancient wisdom.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome. We are at episode number
68.
68.
When did you start that like I don't know, Patrick from SpongeBob sounding voice? What's up, my master?
You know what's really good? Shamli does a really good SpongeBob impression.
What?
Can you do it for us? It's really good. See,
That
when
was
you
unexpected.
spend so much time with
How
these
did you
people
figure
in this
this
podcast,
out?
right? No, because when we spend so much time together, all of this, our weird quirks come out, you know?
Yeah.
Like Priya just rubbed her nose on the microphone.
Okay, we did not have to talk about that.
And I learned that you did that through the sound check, actually.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah.
oh my God, that's such a good SpongeBob impression.
He's like, I'm ready. Ah!
Oh, right. My name is Shama Sagita.
My name's Priyadarshini.
And I'm Shamali with a good SpongeBob laugh.
That was
impression.
really, really good. I really
That's
enjoyed
funny.
that.
We're
Did you
going
guys see
far.
the sign? Did you see the sign the producer made?
Oh, for episode number 68?
Yeah, check it
Sorry,
out.
I missed it. Oh,
It says percentage of swiftiness, and it has three of us drawn
love
in
that.
it, and then how much swiftiness we have in us.
and you know what's interesting? Oh, that's
cool.
a lot
That's-
of swiftiness. And you know what's interesting? For this episode, we get our amazing social media manager, Ella, who's going to join us. Say
Please
hi,
introduce
Ella.
yourself.
hello.
That's her voice.
That is Ella, and Ella is the reason why we are doing okay on doing great.
I thought you were we're going to doing say she's the reason Taylor Swift exists in our podcast.
Well,
And
that too.
Also that. But
The reason we have a strong social media presence is all thanks to this wizard of a woman, Ella.
Ella.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. And so Ella has a microphone today, so she's going to be chiming in
Here and there.
Here and there.
Feel free to add your thoughts, Ella. You got
Thank
this.
you.
All right, so we are on chapter 9, text number 13. But a quick recap of our last episode.
I mean, basically, yeah, we're still in the section of chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge. The sweetest part, we're learning more and more and more about Krishna.
And in the last two texts, he basically was saying that, he is non-material. He is just a regular person for some people, but he's a supreme personality of
Right.
Godhead in a general sense.
He reveals that side to his purest devotees.
Yeah, and a lot of people think he's just a man or a friend or like a politician or whatever, but actually
They are fools.
they are fools and they do not understand him, right? So when you get to know Krishna, you understand that these are ways in which he creates relationships with people, but he is the supreme personality of Godhead.
Right. So, and it's easy to mistaken. We see this regular human form and we think, really? This is God? But we talked about that's one of the abilities of his transcendental form. He's able to take up any form he wants. Don't you think that if he created all of our human forms, he has the capacity to also embody that human form?
Yeah.
We can't have anything that our source doesn't have, just quite literally scientifically. We can't have more than our source. So it makes sense. If we have a human form, Krishna can if he wants to as well.
Yeah. And so he basically was talking about people who are deluded or what's another word?
Bewildered.
Bewildered.
he
That's a
talked
good one
about.
too. They do not really understand him. And so now he's going to go to text 13 and tell us about those who are not.
Okay.
That.
Ooh, fun. All right, invocation, please, ladies.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Translation. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual teacher opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them.
Okay, Priyadarshini, you ready to take it away? Text 13.
Let's do it. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me, Krishna, as the supreme personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible.
So yeah, basically this verse is describing these great souls, or in other words, they're called Mahatmas. The description is clearly given. So the first sign of the Mahatma is that he's already situated in the divine nature. In other words, he's basically not controlled by material nature.
So Krishna is talking specifically of those that are have reached a different level of understanding him. Not just like us here sitting down who kind of understand the concept of us, the soul, Krishna and everything, but he's saying beyond that, right? Who are not affected by material nature, who are, what does that look like? Tell us more, Shamali or Shama.
But isn't he saying like the opposite of the atheists, right? The opposite of the people who don't believe in God, they are under the protection of divine nature, meaning like people who believe that Krishna is God.
Right.
There is another verse that Krishna says, if you're my, my devotees are all protected by me. So I think there's a generalization that could be placed for anyone who's his devotee, but I think they're being very specific to what level of great soul in this particular one. I think they're trying to say like the ultimate level, the ideal circumstance.
Well, we're all trying to.
Yes. We try to be that and we seek the guidance of those Mahatmas. So hopefully some of their spiritual potency rubs off on us. And I like the question, what does that look like, Priya, that you had asked? My first thought is, okay, if a Mahatma is already situated in divine nature, they're steady, they're unwavering, not only in the good moments, but also in the difficult moments. Like I think of my spiritual master, witnessing him passing away. I know he is a Mahatma. His soul that still is existing is a Mahatma, because when facing that ultimate test, the time of death, he was not wavering. He was so steady. He was not afraid at all. And that is a Mahatma, one who's already situated, not just in the good times, but then when there's a little turbulence, they freak out. No, they're always situated already.
I just want to say, I like the word Mahatma because it comes from the adding of Maha, which is greatness, and Atma, which is soul. So it literally means great soul.
I like that breakdown, Priya. Yeah, totally. So, Maha, greatness, like we think of Maha Prasad. Great. Mahaprasad is like the food that's been offered to Krishna. Great food, great soul, Maha, and Atma, soul.
Elevated.
I probably have read that word maybe 100 times, but that was the first time that you broke it down, and I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's elevated. Like it's great. Like synonyms for wonderful, but elevated also like for elevated food offerings, right? Why are they elevated? Because they're offered to God and stuff like that. So
totally. And basically how we're saying a Mahatma is one who's already situated and they're not under the control of material nature. And how does that happen? Because when one surrenders unto Krishna, unto the Supreme Lord, at once we become free of the control of material nature. So we're trying ourselves on our path to become surrendered. And I like this part's important. That is the preliminary formula, because being Krishna's marginal potency, as soon as the living entity or us are freed from the control of material nature, we are put under the guidance of the spiritual nature. And I underlined that part in red. I'm going to read it again. Surrendering is the preliminary formula, because as soon as we're freed of the control of as soon as we're freed of the control of material nature,
start from the beginning.
Rewind. As soon as we're freed from the control of material nature, we are put under the guidance of the spiritual nature. And I love that thought of the guidance of spiritual nature as this strong potency that is literally guiding us. So I put a little sticky note. What does that mean? I want to break it down. What does it mean to be put under the guidance of spiritual nature? So to me, this means, and I would like to hear your thoughts, on a very high level, the super soul or Krishna in our hearts is essentially inspiring all of our words and actions. And when I see that, I think of gurus, our spiritual teachers who are representatives of Krishna, and they've gotten to such a stage where they're so in tune with the subtle, soft voice of the super soul that they're acting on a moment-to-moment basis in line with the guidance of the super soul. So their words, their actions are so inspired by that soft guidance of the super soul. One might say intuition, gut feeling. It's Krishna in your heart, almost whispering in your ear, guiding you in a moment-to-moment basis. You are never alone. So when I read that line, that surrendering is the preliminary formula, because it leads us to being under the guidance of the spiritual nature. And that's the spiritual nature that will guide you in everything. Like my guru's guru, my teacher's teacher said, I'm praying to say something bona fide, to say something guided, you know? He's hoping to surrender to the point where all of our words and actions are guided by the super soul. And now that's difficult, because to hear that soft whisper, you have to first quiet the mind, quiet the senses. You have to be able to be in control of everything to the point where you can hear the gentle voice of the super soul. And that takes elevating your consciousness. It's not like we can all like, oh, Krishna's telling me on a moment to moment basis what to do. Yes, he's telling all of us, but can we hear it? It's hard.
This seems really, so the question, are we aspiring to be Mahatmas in this life?
You know what? Yeah, I think I have an answer to that. And that's actually Prabhupada's answer. Someone asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, how long does it take to become a pure devotee?
Yeah.
A Mahatma would be a great soul, a pure devotee. And Prabhupada said, it can happen in a moment because technically, now realistically, it takes time, but technically it's all up to our level of surrender. It can, for any of us, happen in just takes one moment to really get in the right frame of mind, the right consciousness, the right perspective shift, and boom, you feel it. It can just take a moment.
So it could take,
but
a
it can
moment.
also take a lifetime.
Yeah, I'm
But are we
leaning more,
aspiring? Is that?
Yeah. I'm leaning more towards this whole lifetime business because we're aspiring to be these great souls, and the reason why it feels like kind of a bit of a climb. There's a sentence in the purport that's like, a Mahatma does not divert his attention to anything outside of Krishna. And could you imagine doing that right now? Like we divert our attention all the time.
Yeah.
Like we're Netflix or TikTok or just like movies. Like we're not in that place, especially this younger generation. Like just having your attention on something for more than a couple of seconds is hard, right?
Yeah, I think that the previous, sorry if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
The previous, like the generation of Prabhupada, they basically like left all of their everything, and they just surrendered, and they went to the temple and they did like service to the community, and they devoted their whole lives to this practice of Krishna consciousness. And so like looking at them, we think like, well, how could we ever be that devoted? Because we are householders, grihastas, we are living in this material world and we're part of it. And so I understand what you're saying.
It seems hard.
But Krishna says that it will come naturally.
Yeah.
Because basically, just by taking one step, right? Just by trying to understand Krishna better, and then by purifying our hearts, by controlling our senses, by doing all of this naturally, like the side effects, the positive side effects or the benefits of these efforts that we do is that naturally we get better qualities. Naturally we lose interest in things that maybe are just more distractions from Krishna. And I can give you a silly example.
Yes.
I've been vegetarian my whole life. But I was vegan for about 7 years. And I was vegan because of health concerns, just like health stuff. And it was really hard at first. And then eventually it became very natural. And I was very comfortable being vegan. And the more the years passed, the more disgusting cheese seemed to me.
Oh no.
And I love cheese. Okay. I come from a Hispanic family where we love cheese. Okay. It's very, very loved. And so, but it became disgusting. It became uninteresting. If someone offered me like a cheese pizza, I'd be like, oh no, thank you. That looks heavy. That looks like,
right.
And so I think in a similar way, I think that when you sort of purify your process a little bit at a time, you get to this place where it's no longer interesting to maybe like, you're like, oh, you know what? I don't really feel like watching TV. I'd rather go on a walk and chant my japa. Like some people really have that taste, and it takes a while.
It takes a long time.
For sure. And maybe we're not there yet, but I think there's aspiration because I've definitely seen people who have a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And we've seen other people who live that.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but knowing that some people have a little bit of it is what gives me hope, because I think knowing that someone fully has it is like they devoted everything. And how do you give up everything? Right. That seems much harder.
Yep.
But just having more of that taste for Krishna, that's all we're working on.
Yeah.
And
everything will come naturally.
I love that.
If it feels a little hopeless, because that line that you read, Shama, might give someone the feeling of, oof, will I ever get to that level of just wanting that? The line right after the one you read, I like because it's hopeful. It says, such a Mahatma or great soul develops through association with other Mahatmas, pure devotees. And that's kind of what we're doing. When we're doing sadhu sangha, we're getting together with groups of devotees. When we're able to be in the presence of these great souls, their greatness rubs off on us.
Oh, yeah.
And their attraction to Krishna rubs off on us. And then it's not so difficult. It's not all on our own shoulders to struggle. No, we just have to be around great devotees, and we can do it too.
Hashtag Mahatma Gang. Yeah.
That almost sounded like Mahatma Gandhi.
I did, yeah. That's really
Let's
close.
get that trending.
That's funny. And I think like in terms of that, like we talk about a lot about association. And I think there's two types of association that are kind of important, just personally speaking, not Prabhupada or, Krishna saying this necessarily, but just, I think that it's good to have peers who are experiencing the same struggles, who are all of that. And then I think there's also something beautiful about having senior or like older devotees as association too, because they're inspiring, right? Because you see how they live their lives and they're just a little step ahead of you or a few steps ahead of you, and they're like, oh cool, like wow, I can make my life more Krishna, more Krishna conscious.
Right. And you know what? Very much to Shama, your point, and then Priya later, you had reframed, you had said, yeah, maybe you're feeling that way because how could we dedicate everything if we're householders, we're this, we're that, we have these roles. In a few, either the next one or the one after that, the purport, it says anyone can become a Mahatma, a Grihasta, meaning a householder. No matter what stage in life you're in, you can also become a Mahatma. So you
Even me?
Yes.
Are you guys Pinocchio?
I'm a real boy.
So you don't have to feel that, oh, I have to be in the renounced order and actually give up everything to be a Mahatma, because we've talked about so many times, this is a stage of consciousness. So I may out of duty have to have a worldly job to maintain myself and get food for my family, but it's all in my consciousness, right? So there is hope. Hashtag hope to join the Mahatma Gang.
Mahatma Gang.
All right, should we go to the next text?
Yeah.
Yes, 14.
Shama Sangita.
All right. Krishna is saying, always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion.
I want to just say one thing before we break down the text. When I first read this, I just almost had a flash of someone who might be newer to Bhakti or first hear this, think, ugh, what a egotistical, self-centered God who wants us to just bow down to him. I don't know, that kind of devil's advocate voice rang in my head. And I just want to clarify, Krishna doesn't need this for himself because Krishna's totally self-satisfied. This is truly for us because we're actually deeply only fulfilled on a soul level when we are connected to our source, because everything else in this world is just transitory and impermanent. We will, of course, find happiness in different places, but it's temporary. So our true everlasting satisfaction comes when we do these things and reconnect to Krishna. So he's not saying this for him, but really for us.
Yeah, and yeah, that is the first time Krishna says something like "bow down before me," right?
Right.
So your ears might perk and be like, "Oh," but also it's also like this sign of respect. We show respect to so many different types of people and relationships in our life, and it's like this is what God is asking. If you truly believe in this divine entity that is the source of everything, then that is the least that we can do.
Exactly.
Right?
And just like in any relationship, you need respect.
Right.
So this is just another way.
And I think this is a good moment if I'm able to interject a short story, because here it says, great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. He's not saying only bhakti yogis. He's saying great souls worship me. And that my mind went to Krishna appears to everybody when their consciousness and their heart is open. And this reminded me of a story my dad shared with our family. An incredible story of this Catholic mystic who was deemed a saint from the 16th century. Her name is Saint Teresa of Avila. And get this, I'll just tell you the little hook and then I'll tell you the story. She had a vision of Krishna in Vrindavan. She wasn't a bhakti yogi. She was a Catholic saint, later became a saint, who was a mystic. So basically Saint Teresa in Seville, recorded her accounts of consciousness, they were called, kind of, I guess, like a journal that she kept. And it says in chapter 38 on August 9th, 1575, here's what she wrote. This was, I think, a vision that came to her, and she just started describing it. So again, no previous knowledge of Krishna before this. So she says, suddenly a recollection came to me with such a great interior light that I seemed to be in another world, and my spirit found itself within itself in a very delightful forest and orchard. So much so that it made me remember what it said in the Song of Songs. And it quotes it, I think, in what is this? Not
Hebrew?
No. What is the ancient language? Veniat dilectus.
Oh, Latin.
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 Brain fart. So she quotes this that come he, my beloved, to his garden and eat its delicate fruits. So kind of like the eternal garden it made her think of. And she says, I saw there in this delicious place where great souls go, a blackish youth with a strange beauty. On top of his head, he had something like a garland, not a crown, of great precious stones, and many maidens who walked there with him, with bouquets in their hands, all singing praises to God. I did nothing but open my eyes so as not to be distracted, and it was not possible for me to take my attention off it. There was a music of angels and singing of birds, which the soul enjoyed, although I did not hear it with my physical ears, but the soul was in that delight. I looked as there was no other man there. This lasted for more than an hour and a half, that I could not take my eyes off or my attention, and with great delight, something different from other visions. And what I got from there was more love for God, and keeping him more deeply present with that beauty. It is not possible that it was imagination.
What is going on?
Wow, that's amazing.
That's
Right?
wild.
Like, oh my God, this was a Catholic mystic saint from the 1600s who had
That's so
no
cool.
prior image of Krishna, a
he
blackish youth with his like eternal gopis
Gopis.
around him.
That's so
oh
cool.
my, I got chills the first time I
Where'd
read
you hear this story?
My dad sent this story that a devotee back in the community in
Okay.
Dallas had told him about. And hopefully we can post this story, just like a link to it if you want to read it on our Instagram. But, you know, it
How
makes me
lucky.
think Krishna reveals himself to those great souls. Doesn't matter what your path is, where you're from, doesn't matter what religion you are. These are all distinctions we might make in this human form, but the soul knows its eternal divine connection to God. And Krishna revealed himself to this saintly woman.
How
That's
lucky.
amazing.
Oh
So
my
lucky.
God, right?
And amazing that she wrote it down. Amazing that it was shared with others. I think that's the greatest joy, right? When we like have realizations and others get to like be inspired by them. That's amazing.
Right.
That she saw that. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing.
Yeah.
That was
yeah.
lovely. Is there anything else you want to say in terms of this text?
Well, I like that Prabhupada clarifies how when the question of glorification is there, one has to glorify the Supreme, praising his name, form, qualities. Like, what does glorification mean? It means talking about every aspect of him, his pastimes, all of these things. And that's why, therefore, Mahatma is attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So basically, glorifying him means, you know, when you're in love, what do you want to do? You want to think of the person. You want to talk about them. He said this. Oh my God, it was so sweet. He said that. He looks like this. Anything about him. The Mahatma's always engaged in basically these different activities of devotional service.
It also says that the Mahatmas or great souls are strictly, they strictly observe all these rules and regulations, and therefore they're sure to achieve the desired result. And I
Right.
think like it's important to remember that there is like the heart connection.
Exactly.
And then there is like the steps to follow, because we
Totally.
can be really whimsical and be like, I love God, and then have no actual
Right.
path on how to connect deeper.
Yeah. No execution.
Right. So
Right.
there's a need for execution as well. And there's a need for understanding. So for example, we do ekadashis, which
Totally.
are austerities in which we fast from grains. And there's different things that you can do. Right. So it's not just like, I love God and that's it. You know, there's steps. So that's
Right.
why it's great to have the Bhagavad Gita and understand a Mahatma is connected to Krishna from the heart, but also like very
right. Fixed.
fixed. That's a great word. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Prabhupada says the Mahatma has firm determination. I think this is what you're describing, to achieve all the ultimate. I like this. Yeah, the Mahatma has firm determination to achieve at the ultimate end the association of the Supreme Lord in any one of the 5 moods or rasas, you know? So they're, like you're saying, Priya, they're very fixed. They
Yeah.
want it so badly. They have that drive that nothing's going to get in my way. Oh, I'm feeling a little whatever. I don't think I can chant today.
And
no.
I think it's like even beyond that, right? Like it's like their consistency. It's not even about want or desire or anything. It's like, it's just like regulated. They're
Totally.
fixed. They're like every day they wake up, they think of Krishna, they bathe, they make food, they offer to Krishna. Like the routines give them like a clear path that there's just not going to be as many distractions as the ones
Exactly.
we have, right? When you lead a life so simple, right? It's like, what is it? Simple living, high thinking,
Right,
right?
right.
So I think that's kind of the intention too.
Totally.
At that point, you're not like, oh, do I watch Netflix or do I chant my rounds? It's not about that at that point anymore. You're already at that form of my day, my free time is for chanting.
Right.
Like it's a completely different consciousness when you get to that point.
I mean, yeah, they're at the point where they want to do it, but I think it's good that you're pointing out is beyond want, because let's say what one day I wake up and I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. No, you still do it because you know that, you know what, in the end is going to take me somewhere that's even more worth it. There's this girl, super sweet girl in the Sage group that my mom and I helped kind of mentor. And she was saying that she's struggled waking up early her whole life. I struggle too waking up early anyway. But the second she started shifting it, rather than I struggle because I am tired, I don't want to, all about me, she started thinking, you know what? Prabhupada came here and did so much to spread this that if I shift my consciousness and I'm waking up for Krishna because I want to be able to chant my rounds in the early hours of the morning when everything's peaceful, then it no longer becomes what I want, but I'm doing it for Krishna. So she told us how the next day her alarm sounded at 5 a.m. and she just bounced out of bed. I'm doing it for Krishna. And she started chanting. And I was like, oh man, I better step up my game and chant before work. But it was so beautiful to hear her enthusiasm of like, I'm not going to just do it because I don't want to wake up early, but I'm doing this for Krishna, for something higher. What is your driving purpose? What is your North Star that's going to guide you in the right direction, you know?
Yeah. I have a little bit of a, this is saying too much about myself, but I
I think we should share more about ourselves. That was one thing. Some of our friends, my friends were like, I want to hear more about your actual, like, what is your routine? What do you do?
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, like, I lack conviction sometimes. Like, for example, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but like, I'm not very money driven, for example.
Right.
I don't really care about making too much money. I would love to be able to like provide for my family and like those things, right? Like those things are wonderful. But beyond that, I don't have like aspirations of being wealthy or just stuff like that. I don't have that kind of ambition for these sort of things. And similarly, I don't have like the ambition to be like, I'm going to do my job up because it benefits me. So when you said that, it reminds me of how I think of it too, because for my benefit, it's not a thought process I usually have. I think it's a trauma from childhood. If you think about it, I just generally think about things in perspective to others. So like, how can I help others is more important than how can I help myself in a general sense. And so
Right. So thinking of it that way.
So when you think about japa and how like japa is supposed to help you get closer to Krishna, it's like not a factor, like not a motivational factor for me. So then I have to think about this as Krishna has given me so much. Right. You know, I want to do this for him too. Like, so the way that she was saying it,
do it for Krishna.
Like I have to think of it that way because the motivation doesn't come the other
right,
way around.
Totally. That's nice. Like you have to frame it in a way that'll motivate you then. So this is for Krishna. This is for my spiritual master because I made a commitment. That's my first seva, my first service to him is doing good rounds.
So so whatever your psychology is, like I think it's good to like understand and work with it because we're all a little different and we all have different perspectives, you know,
different traumas. Yeah.
Right. And basically they're saying that this fixed determination basically happens that to achieve the success, a Mahatma engages all of their activities, mental, bodily, vocal, everything to serve the Lord in any way they can. You know, you make it happen.
Yeah. What's great about this verse is like Krishna gives kind of like this, like kind of a checklist as to like how to have more devotion, right? It's like, you know, and making sure you try with determination, bow down before. And the thing that I love is always chanting my glories. And there's this one thing that I've always remembered, and our friend, do you know JC Das? Yeah. Right. And so he always used to say that there's this notion of like, you know, he was watching a Lakers game when Kobe Bryant was alive. And like, this was one of Kobe's last games and the crowd was chanting, Kobe, 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 right? And so like, how do we show admiration for someone? We chanted their name, right? Krishna, 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 right? It's the same thing. It's like when we want to show that we love this person, that we admire this person, we chant their name, right? Like the entire crowd was chanting Kobe. And in the same way, like Krishna's talking about always chanting his glories, right? And essentially like chanting the Maha Mantra, whether together in a group of people or chanting silently by yourself. Like Krishna's giving us the breakdown of how to get closer to him.
I really like that.
Yeah, right?
That's a good
Beautiful.
visualization, because all these people in the stands, they know him to a superficial level.
Yeah.
And they're still showing so much devotion.
Yeah.
Right. And along with that metaphor of just, they were all, I'm sure they were having the time of their lives chanting for him. That connects to the last part of the purport that Prabhupada says it's such a happy process and that's accessible for everyone, because he says not only is this devotional service easy, but it can, because we just talked about rules, regulations, yes, but it can be performed in the mood of happy service. One doesn't have to undergo any severe penance and austerity. Prabhupada says he can live his life in devotional service, guided by an expert spiritual master, and in any position, either as a householder or a renounced sannyasi or a brahmachari, which is like the young student phase. So in any position, anywhere in the world, he can perform his devotional service to the Supreme, to Krishna, and thus become actually Mahatma, a great soul.
Yeah. I was talking to a really good friend of mine. She lives in the ashram. And I just asked her, how are you doing? And she said, oh, it's tough, but I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, she's like, I can't imagine my life in any other way. This life is so wonderful. And that's like someone who's like devoted their life to serving Krishna in the temple community and other devotees. And it's just really sweet to hear that from someone. So yeah, it's true. It's a happy movement.
It is a happy movement, yeah. My partner who doesn't believe in this movement, she's like, you're not hurting anybody, and all of you seem pretty happy, so do your thing, you know. You sure you worship a rock with googly eyes on it, but yeah, you're not hurting anybody. You're just doing your own thing, so go do it.
What a perspective!
Yeah, I know, right?
That's so funny. Googly eyes.
Yeah, that's the Shaligam Sheila, right?
Yeah. It's Krishna
in the form of the last
Govardhan
episode.
Hill.
Yeah, the Govardhan Hill. Yeah, that's interesting. Anything else?
No? Text
that's
15, ladies?
Text
Shamali.
15, Shamali.
Okay, I'm going to get to read a text now. Woohoo. Okay. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme as... Oh, okay, sorry. Rewind.
From the top.
Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many and in the universal form.
Wait. One more time.
Yeah.
One more time.
One more time.
Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many, and in the universal form. The line as okay, let's break it down.
Because I'm still confused.
So basically, one who engages in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge. So when we're fixed in knowledge of the Supreme, we worship the Supreme Lord as one without a second. There's like no one like him. One without a second.
One without a second.
A second, not as in time, but a second,
As in second place.
Oh my God.
One without a second. I like that. He is
makes
one
sense.
without comparison. As
Got it.
diverse in many. Like that was like in the previous verse, the previous episode, Priya, you talked about how Krishna can, in the debate between an atheist and a spiritualist, tune into that last one. We're not going to re-explain it all, but Krishna can appear in any form. He is as diverse in many. Krishna has the ability, the potency to be anything, anyone. He can be, God is one.
Okay.
And he can take the form to cater to his devotee.
Yeah. Diverse. Yes.
Diverse. And not only is he divorced, oh my God, not only is he diverse, but he's also the whole entire universal form and cosmos and expansion. He is everything.
Okay, wait. So now that we understand the context, read it one more time.
Okay. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship the Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many, and in the universal form.
Got it.
Right.
That was great.
So
that was a great breakdown.
Yeah,
That was super helpful.
Oh,
because
thank you.
basically the sacrifice by cultivation of knowledge just means taking the time to understand Krishna.
Exactly.
So if you take the time to understand Krishna, you worship him as though he's the one.
The only one.
The only one, but also incredibly diverse and also the universal form.
Right. So basically,
Love it.
Prabhupada's saying this verse is the summary of the previous verses, because Krishna is basically telling Arjuna that those who are purely in Krishna consciousness and don't know anything other than Krishna are Mahatmas. Yet there are other persons who maybe are not exactly in the positions of a Mahatma, but they also worship Krishna in different ways. Okay, so he's diverse and many. And some have already been described, like these people who worship Krishna in different ways, maybe are described as the distressed, the financially destitute, the inquisitive, and those who are engaged in the cultivation of knowledge. But I think this is an interesting breakdown now. There are others who are still lower, and these are divided into
Lower
three.
than?
Lower than maybe like someone who comes to Krishna consciousness or to spirituality because they're financially broke and they're in distress.
They need money
or whatever. They might come through that route, but it's still fine. You know, they came to this philosophy. Oh my God, beautiful.
It will be helpful anyways.
But there's some that are even still lower, and they're broken down into three. Do you see the first one, Priya? Do you want to read that?
He who worships himself as one with the Supreme Lord.
Ooh.
So he thinks I'm God.
He's like, I'm God.
Yep.
I'm God, but like I'm also like if I worship Krishna, I'm worshiping myself.
Yeah, that's kind of like, you know what? There's a lot of like hippy dippy friends who I might say something about God and they're like, yeah, we're all God. And I'm like, well, not what I said.
Sorry, bro.
All right. Sure. And then we started having a discussion. But anyway, Shama, do you see number 2?
Yep. He who concocts some form of the Supreme Lord and worships that. Ooh. So you're basically creating a voodoo doll and you're like, this is my God now. Or like, you know, in that movie Castaway where he created that was his God, right? Right. What was the name of that?
Wilson?
Wilson, right? So
Wilson.
and like, this is my God now.
And I do want to say when Shama kind of,
you know what I mean?
When Shama said in a humorous way, a rock with googly eyes, it's not that whatever goes. No, we actually have these specific forms that we're trying. People say specific ancient mantras to evoke, like, Krishna, please enter this form and we will worship you in this way until I'm able to see you in your divine form.
But they're not any form. Like you can't just choose a shoe and be like, I'm going to bring Krishna into
totally,
this shoe.
yeah,
like that would be this kind of person who just thinks that they can concoct something, right?
Some random thing that they make. They put together with Legos or something.
Yeah, we're not making it up. This is in Vedic scriptures, right? So in the Vedic scriptures, it says, "Oh, Krishna can be worshipped in the form of Krishna as a figure in a wooden form, or made out of metal, or made out of stone, right? Or marble, right? So we have like deities which are made out of that. Right. So we follow the injunctions that the Vedic scriptures tell us, not just make it up and say like, oh,
this Lego Krishna is going to be a great worshipful deity.
Right, not like that. And I know we've talked about many times that people who are new might struggle with how can we limit God's expansive form to just this one form? We're not saying that this is his only form. We're just doing these mantras to bring his, please enter this form in one of your expansions so we may worship you.
And I think if I clear, because you said, you know, Krishna in a Lego form, I think you can still worship Krishna in a Lego form. I think what you can do is grab a Lego and say, this is Krishna.
Right. Like
and
you're
I'm
saying
gonna
like
worship the Lego. Like you can't like, if it looks like Krishna, then you're tapping into Krishna, right?
Right.
Like, so like a picture or something about Krishna, it works. But if you're like, this water bottle is Krishna and I'm going to worship water bottle. That, you know, that's not
so creepy.
Right. Yeah. If you saw the video, that was really creepy.
Right. Like if a little kid were to have a little Lego form of Krishna, and let's say the kid starts praying to that little Lego form, fine. Like Krishna, 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 that's still your heart is in the good place. He's not thinking Legos are Krishna. No, but yeah. And
then the third one, Shamali?
Yeah, the third one is he who accepts the universal form, the Vishvarupa of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and worships that. So like the impersonal, like, you know, Krishna's impersonal Brahman energy is the whole expansive universe because it's not his personal form is Krishna's human form is Krishna playing the flute in Goloka Vrindavan. His impersonal form would be like that whole expansive like cosmos, the universe. Like, so when one thinks that's only Krishna, no, that's one of his energies. So, okay, yeah, you're worshiping his energy indirectly, but you're not directly worshiping his personal form.
Yeah. And Krishna wants that, right? He wants us to worship
the
personal relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah. Go ahead,
no, I was just going to say, Prabhupada says that third class that you were just reading, Shamali, it says the third class includes those who cannot conceive anything beyond the manifestation of the material universe.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So they basically just like the universe is God. And that's all I can fathom. There's no Krishna. It's just the universe. universe is God. And that is also not necessarily...
Exactly. Because we acknowledge, yes, the universe is everything comes from Krishna. So the universe is also his energy, but that's not the end all be all.
Right.
And it's interesting. Prabhupada says that out of the three classes that we mentioned, the lowest one that we want to definitely avoid are those who worship themselves as the Supreme Lord, thinking themselves to be monists, and are mostly this third category is the most predominant one, that people think themselves to be Krishna or the Supreme Lord. And in this mentality, we only worship ourselves.
It's so fascinating. I could never, like, considering my limitations, I
Right.
could never think myself Krishna.
I
you
think
know?
that is so funny when someone thinks themselves God. Like, God's in our heart, yes, but we are not God. I mean,
But at the same time, if you remember a long time ago, I told you that story about me being a kid and thinking like, we only see things from our eyes, right? So like so disconnected from perspective that we don't see other people's perspectives. We can think like the world functions through my existence.
right.
Like everyone else is an NPC. Is that the right term?
NPC, yes.
Thank you.
What does that mean?
Non-playing
Character?
character.
I think it's like basically
Yeah.
it's just like in a video game, like you're the main character and everyone else is just like pretend. Like I can see how some people might perceive life as like everything's happening to me. I am the center of it all, and
Right.
everyone else is just existing for my stories.
Right. Right.
So I can see that kind of mindset, but
Right. And maybe it's just a little falter in having a backbone of philosophy to anchor yourself, because someone may also think, oh, divinity is in me, therefore I am divinity. Not really.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they
yeah.
think, oh, God's in me, so I am God. They're taking a little leap that like, no,
Right.
the philosophy is missing there, but they kind of like, they're on the right track in the sense that yes, divinity
yeah.
is in me, but I am not God myself. We
Right.
all have a droplet of
Right.
God's divinity in us in the form of the super soul that we've talked about, but that does not equate to, and thus I am God. No, and thus I am eternally connected to God, and I will derive all of my strength, satisfaction, and energy when I reconnect to that divine source, to the ocean that I'm a little extension of.
And you
Yeah.
see that a lot in like new age spiritualists,
Totally,
right? And like,
totally.
especially in LA, where you go to certain yoga studios and be like, let's all just be God together, right? And it's just like,
Please tell me what yoga studio that was.
When you hear that,
I'm just kidding.
just run.
Oh my God.
in the opposite direction.
I
Yeah.
think it could be like I'm like trying to put my like play devil's advocate and put myself in those shoes and think like they must think like, well, if I do that, then I focus on me and then like I take care of. I don't know. It's just like is it like it's hard for me to understand that
Like-
perspective, but it's like I can see why it works, right?
Yeah, because I think they attribute any flaws. Because you were saying, right, we couldn't possibly think that way because we see our limitations, but they might think the limitations are only due to our material body that's covering our God being within, the soul within,
my
you know?
God, that's so
and that
interesting.
because Prabhupada said in a few purports back that they think that, the humanness is my body covering it right now, but when I lose my body again, I'll step into my true greatness and I am God.
interesting.
But
But-
that again is missing the philosophy to back it up. Like,
Yeah.
no, when we lose our body, the soul will retain its own individual soul self and continue on its journey until
Krishna.
we're able to go back to Krishna, who is God.
Very nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very nice.
I
Very
think
nice.
that's it, guys.
That's it for this episode. We will be on chapter 9, text number 16.
And last thing, if we are lucky, we will be able to maybe become like one of those quote unquote maidens that the Catholic mystic saint saw in her vision. We're not going to become God, but we'll go into his eternal pastimes and worship him eternally in the spiritual realm.
I'd love to be that maiden. Me too.
All right, guys.
Thanks for listening.
Beautiful.
See you next time.
Bye. Hello, beautiful souls. If you like what you're hearing, please follow us on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast.
And if you love what you're hearing, please make sure to share a link to our podcast at Modern Yogi Podcast with all your friends, families, and long-lost cousins.
And if you have any questions at all, send us a DM on Instagram at Modern Yogi Podcast and we'll be sure to get back to you.
Thank you for listening to
The Modern Yogi.